All right, folks, a quick message before we get started from our sponsors, React Health. React Health, formerly 3B Medical, a leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. Now back to the show.
All right, let's get these pre-cals started. Emerson.
Yes, sir.
What's going on this week? What's going on today?
You know what? We are kicking off SleepTech Appreciation Week. Boom.
Woo!
Mic drop.
Mic
And
drop.
we have got the president of the AAST, Laree Fordyce, joining us today. Super excited about having her. We serve together on the board. She is one delightful human being. I'm really looking forward to having her on today.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I would say I've been connected with her for a long time on LinkedIn, but have never had the opportunity to actually speak to her. So I'm pretty excited about, getting to know her a little bit and definitely want to know more about the world that she lives in. You know, the medicine in Canada is very different than the US. So I'm going to surprise her with a question about the differences between US and Canadian sleep medicine. So stay tuned. I'm going to interject at some riveting moment in the and completely
So surprising.
No, somehow not surprised with that.
Yeah.
I will say though, well, I was just going to say it's interesting to bring that up because preventative social medicine is something that we do in med school, and it's always interesting to see how different countries apply that. And so it would be interesting to hear her take on it.
Yeah.
Same time, I'm excited by the fact that we have somebody who represents all sleep techs, the president of that body, kicking off the week. So it'll be very fun, a lot of fun to do that. At the same time, we've got swag, and
yep.
Robert looking handsome as ever, man.
Hey,
is swag an old term or is it just merch now?
Merch. I think merch is a better word since we're a band. Rock stars, so let's call it merch. Yeah, we got to figure out, folks out there, we're going to figure out a way to let you get in on this as well. We've got cool merch, so we'll find a way to get that over to you. But pre-cals are over, and let's get the show started.
All right, folks, before we move on to the next segment, a very quick message from our friends and sponsors, 3B, or rather, React Health. They were formerly 3B Medical. For more information, be sure to go to reacthealth.com or contact your local sales representative. Now back to the show.
Lights out.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast. I got the shirt on this time. So, hey, if you're listening, you got to move on to YouTube and check out the swag, all right? Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about the swag in a little bit later, maybe, but thank you all for joining us once again for another show because this is a very, very special show. We kick off SleepTech Appreciation Week, and that celebrates all of you, all of us. Thank you all so much for doing what you do as sleep techs. Without you, the world couldn't exist as it is today, and that is the truth because there'll be more car accidents, more road traffic accidents, more heart attacks, more strokes, but because of the life in general is better, and we appreciate each and every one of you. So with that being said, make sure to spread the love, share, like this episode, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're listening on the podcast, like and share once again. And with that being said, I'm going to toss it off to Emerson to tell us what we have on the agenda today. Emerson, over to you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. So glad to be here today with Robert and Jerry and our guest, Laree Fordyce. Laree hails from Calgary, Canada, a little farther north than the three of us, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Laree with us today. Laree is the current president of the AAST, and we couldn't have a better president than Laree right now. We serve together on the board, just a fantastic leader. But when Laree's not leading us in sleep technology, she is the Director of Sleep Services of Maple Respiratory Group. She has been actively participating in sleep medicine for more than 25 years. She's a clinical sleep educator and has also worked in multiple capacities in sleep technology throughout her career. She has a passion for teaching and education in sleep technology. Laree has written chapters for the Fundamentals of Sleep Technology textbook and workbooks, and she has had the privilege of speaking in multiple meetings regionally and nationally for quite some time. Laree, it is absolutely fantastic to have you here today. Love working with you on the executive committee with the AAST, but one of the things that we like to do before we really dig deep into our conversation is to talk about how you got into sleep technology. So Laree, welcome. And if you can, take a few minutes and tell us how you got here.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. It is an honor, so thank you. Actually, to be quite honest, I never actually wanted to go into sleep. I started out as an EEG tech by trade, and one of the modalities you could pick was sleep, and I said, I am never doing that. It just so happened that once I finished my schooling, I ended up getting a job in the States. So I'm from Canada, so I did get a job in the US. And unfortunately, probably a month into me being there, the sleep lab needed personnel, and they're like, you know what, you can read sleep studies, you know how to put electrodes on people, will you come and help us out? So that's what I did, and that's pretty much how I got into it.
Wow. So Laree, you've got so much you've been doing, especially with Maple Respiratory. We certainly want to talk about what you're doing with the AAST, but with Maple Respiratory, you're not only working in Canada, but you're also doing a little bit in Latin America. So if you can give us, especially for our friends in the United States and even around the world that listen to our show, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Maple Respiratory in Canada and Latin America, and that we'd love to hear about things they never get to interact with.
So sleep in North America is pretty much the same. What we do in Canada is pretty much what you guys do in the US there. But in Latin America, it's actually quite different. And we just went over there just to, open a sleep lab and see where we got to. So here we are, we're probably 9 years in. We run 77 level 1 sleep studies, 363 days a year over there. So we have a ginormous organization. We have over 50,000 patients on PAP therapy. So that just gives you an idea of what we do over there. The nice thing for us is, we take what we've learned in North America and try and bring it over there. Most of the doctors over there are respirologists, but they haven't had any formal training in sleep. So we kind of bring over what we know. I've been over there several times. In our sleep labs, we, teach them the way that we should be teaching them, from electrode placement to all our policies and procedures. So I'd like to say we have a top, notch lab over there, but we definitely, have a lot of studies that we do. Our new trainees from here in Canada, we don't do that many studies, so we actually send them over there so they can really get their feet wet and see what it's like to, get on that hamster wheel and be like, get in there and sink or swim.
Laree, just for the sake of our American audience that may not know this, guys, respirologist is what we call pulmonologists here in the US. I did have a question. Do you see in South America, or did you say South or Latin America? I'm sorry.
We're in Colombia, so it's Latin America. Yeah.
Okay, Latin America. So there, do you see predominantly OSA patients, or is it a different mix of, or just general mix of patients that you see in the labs there?
Primarily, it's OSA. So in Colombia, that is mostly where we see our patients. We started out in Bogota, which is their capital, and now we're in 9 other cities across the country. The other thing within Colombia, their altitude is 7,500 feet above sea level. So just on altitude alone, we do see a lot more altitude induced, sleep apnea, which you guys wouldn't necessarily see. Here in Calgary, we're 3,500 feet above sea level. So we see a little bit of it, but we don't see too much. But our average SAT is 93% just because of altitude, which we would consider normal. But yeah, over in Colombia, it is primarily OSA patients. They have a significant obese population. So, and you know what, we don't actually have, I can't imagine, it's unfortunate, but people that have other sleep disorders, they would be on the bottom of the waiting list.
Laree, for our listeners, when you start talking about altitude, unless they live in where you do or Colorado and a few other places, they probably aren't going to understand some of the challenges that patients face with altitude sickness and things like that. What sort of, from a respiratory disturbance standpoint, and even maybe a cardiac standpoint, do you see in these patients that are suffering from an altitude-related sleep disorder breathing?
We see a lot more central sleep apnea, which you probably wouldn't see if you were at sea level. And then, of course, when you do end up with patients that have central sleep apnea, you are more predisposed to cardiac conditions. With the high altitude, which most people, definitely, I don't think appreciate until you can see something like that, is there's also a lot of, when we look at what low saturation is, when you're with these people, low saturation, we see a lot more people, and if you weren't used to that, you'd be, oh my goodness, like, what should I do? Should I get in there? But, it's just normal for everyday life over there.
No disrespect to the RTs, but I used to see them back in the day when they were new to running sleep studies. They'd see the DSATs and they want to intervene right away without normal for these patients. So it's interesting that you brought that up, that hey, this, you may be distressed by just looking at it, but this is very normal in these cases.
And I think even us as sleep techs, it's kind of like, oh, that's perfectly normal, where, somebody, like you say, just walking by would be like, aren't you going to do something?
Right.
So I know that this is a little bit of a loaded question, but and maybe too complex for the time that we have here, but just how's sleep medicine a little bit different in your area versus what you know to be true for sleep medicine in the US?
So in Canada, things work quite a bit differently. As you know, we're the socialist medicine people. So it pretty much, like when we talk about healthcare is free. It's not actually free because we pay for it through our taxes. But everybody is entitled to free healthcare, if you will, which means we have extremely long waiting lists. What would be an average waiting list for you guys for someone to get into the sleep center? Just
probably 4 to 6 weeks, I would guess.
All right. So where I am currently, to get in for a PSG in our public system, it's upwards of a year. And if you are a pediatric patient, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 year wait list.
Oh my goodness.
OSA takes priority. So if you have any other sleep disorder, you're kind of on the bottom of the list. And mostly it's just because we don't have enough sleep docs to see all these patients, and the amount of beds that we have, it's just people are waiting. We do a ton of home sleep apnea testing because it's the only way that we can get the garden variety OSA patients out of that line, get them, diagnosed and treated on AutoPAP. So AutoPAP is what we use primarily. We don't use a lot of standard or fixed pressure CPAP. Did that answer your question?
Those patients can be, you did, that's perfect, actually. Although those patients are complicated because, when you talk about elevation and the use of auto CPAP and central sleep apnea and low oxygen saturations, that's a complicated patient. Not complex necessarily, but it may be complex, but complicated for sure.
Right. And so because we have those issues, one of the things that the body, our governing body here has suggested is that everyone that does home sleep apnea testing, which are usually done by DME companies, they must have some sleep experience. And actually, all the home sleep apnea testing that are done have to be manually scored by an RPSGT. So they're trying to do things the right way, as well as, you know, like I call them the garden variety OSA, like some of those patients that you say, you know, are more complex, they probably are in certain other areas. But for us, in order to get them, you know, out of the line and, you know, treated quicker, it's the best that we can do. But we definitely use patient monitoring for every single patient. And, you know, that has been a tremendous godsend for us, because then you can see the patients, you know, in almost a nightly basis, right? And being able to fix those things.
Well, Laree, I love you being able to describe all of that for us, you know, because I think it's great for our listeners to understand that, you know, for the most part, sleep technology is going to be the same anywhere in the world. Clearly, depending on geography, it changes, and politics can change it, payers can change it, and certainly, you know, those demographics. But, you know, thinking about that, one of the things I love the most is that you're, you know, our leader in the AST. And how did you get involved in the AST? And if you can, give us a sort of a quick story on your journey from being a director or maybe a committee member to being president. And then, you know, what are some of the things we're working on with the AST in this, the remainder of this year and next year?
One of the reasons I actually got involved with AAST is, I guess, sort of political, if you will. Provinces in our country, we had a significant amount of, everybody wanted to open a sleep lab because there was government funding. So because everybody did that, we used to say that we were the Taco Bell labs of on every corner, because everybody knew that that's where the money was. But that didn't mean that you had good technical quality. So one of the reasons I actually joined AAST was so that, you know, I could start to learn a little more about policies, procedures, and what are the things that, you know, we should be doing as good sleep techs. And that's one of the things. I sit on a lot of committees in Canada as well in Alberta, just to make sure that, you know, people that are doing studies and things like that, that they are doing them the right way. I started out just as, you know, as a regular member. I got into be a committee member. And then once I got into the membership and communications committee, I sat on that committee until they decided to kick me off, you know, after you've served too many years. I moved to program committee. And then eventually I decided to apply for the board of directors. And a great honor for me is I get to be the first Canadian president. But being on the AST has been phenomenal. You know, just being a member and all the things that are available to me, as well as, you know, what you can learn. The best thing for me has been relationships, you know, having relationships with all of you, you know, getting to see what people are into, what people are doing, and, you know, just being able to have those relationships, as well as networking and, you know, knowing what's going on in the field, not just, you know, your overall, just your night tech. Does that sound a little bit like rambling? I really do love being a member of the AST, and I'm glad that all of you are as well.
Laree, that's not rambling at all, and we appreciate that. Hey, Emerson, did you want to ask something? I saw your mic going.
Yeah, I just, you know, as you know, I know that Laree's passionate about all the tools that we've built. And Laree, what are a couple of things as we begin to wrap up that, you know, you want to champion or people to know about with the AST? You know, because I know you've done a ton of work to bring resources to our membership. What are some highlights as we begin to wrap up today around, you know, the programs and the offerings that we have?
You know, one of the things is I think would be this, our CCSH program. I think it is definitely something we should all be proud of. You know, you became an RPSGT at one point, and that's kind of where your career ended. And then I think as time has evolved, being sleep educators, when BRPT came out with CCSH, that was definitely something you could look for and get another credential under your belt to show, you were still keeping up in sleep. The AAST also has other modules, please check out our website, the EKG module, especially if you're just starting out, learning more about, cardiac issues in the sleep lab, because you don't always get to know, what's going on if you haven't been taught properly. And sometimes when you read it in a book, it's not exactly what you're going to see on screen. So we have a lot of those things available. As we are going to be celebrating SleepTech Appreciation Week, I'd like to say, we are going to be offering for your listeners a 22% discount on any of the information that we have, materials. So you guys will have the information on how, your listeners can go on and redeem that discount.
Laree, thank you so much. And listeners, did you hear that? A 22% discount. So please keep that in mind. We'll try to get that information in the show notes that kicks off SleepTech Appreciation Week. So I think that's a great gift for the SleepTechs. Laree, it's been fantastic. We are out of time, but we thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're extremely busy running all these labs and the AAST President. So we thank you so much for joining us today. Our listeners and our viewers out there, we thank you as well. We sincerely appreciate you being SleepTechs and appreciate you being our listeners and viewers. We can't thank you enough for that. Once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share this podcast, this show with your friends and other SleepTechs out there. But as we are out of time, on behalf of Robert, Emerson, and myself, Jerry, we say thank you. And until next time, lights on.
Okay, just a few seconds for a word from our friends and sponsors, React Health, formerly 3B Medical, a leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. Their Luna G3 family of PAP devices are FDA approved and offer cellular modem standard in CPAP, AutoPAP, bilevel, and bilevel ST modes to treat all kinds and a full range of sleep disordered breathing. The magnet-free line of PAP devices or PAP masks include Siesta Full Face, Siesta Nasal, and the Rio 2 Nasal Pillows Mask, all of which have less than 1% refit rate. And for more information, go to reacthealth.com or contact your local React sales representative. Now back to the show.
All right. Sorry, had some laughs. Folks out there, we just had a laugh during the pause. So what'd you guys think?
Wow. Laree is one of those people that, she's got so much going on to be not only operating in Canada, particularly Western Canada, but then in Colombia. Colombia is such a fascinating market. They have, reimbursement for CPAP, and her company really dove into that. And, you can just see her passion about excellence and detail. She's a champion for that, for SleepTechs. And then just, what she's excited about with CCSH and what the AST is doing. It was great to hear all of that today from her.
I agree. The thing about Colombia, I thought that was really interesting because one of the sleep labs I worked for, the medical director, he was very keen on going to get something started in Colombia. And I was thinking, of all places, why Colombia? But he had studied the demographic, he had studied the economy and such, and I thought it was something else. But it was very interesting. It never took off from him, and this was 10, 15 years ago. And to hear that they've been doing this for nearly a decade in Colombia, I found that very, very interesting. Robert, your insights?
I got two things. First of all, does this make our show international? I mean, we've gone outside of the U.S.
Hey,
absolutely.
Hey.
Okay, so I'm going to say we're an international.
Yeah.
We're an international phenomenon now,
There you
and
go.
and secondly, she did a great job breaking down the difference between sleep medicine in, her area there in Canada versus here in the US. And, it's interesting to hear the different nuances. Even some of the legislation that's been put in place that still keeps quality, as part of the overall care of the patient. She talked about the fact that their DME providers actually are the ones who dispense the home sleep test, but it has to be scored by a registered sleep tech. So, there's a quality component, even though the dispensing piece may be a little bit different. So maybe some of those channels are different than what we have here in our country. And then to hear, that they don't do as many in labs in her area, so they have to send students down to, to Columbia to actually perform in lab testing is pretty amazing.
What did you guys think about her role in the AAST?
Well, I love the fact that she is the first Canadian president of the AAST. That's fantastic.
That's cool, right?
Yeah. It just, it speaks to our diversity. Even though the AAST, part of that acronym is American, it really represents the world, because, the organization isn't built for just one country. The sleep technology is the country. We're a community, and whether you're in the United States or Canada or anywhere in Latin America, Asia, Europe, we're, the AST, it represents all people that are performing tests and taking care of patients in our sleep medicine community.
I agree. It was very good to hear that when she said that it was really cool. So
yeah,
you're right. It does reflect the diversity of all of us as sleep techs out there.
Yeah.
And
of course, the exciting part is, because she's on, our listeners are going to get a 22% discount on education. That is a fantastic savings for our listeners. That you can't beat that. Fantastic.
22%. There you go.
There'll be a QR code that we'll share in our post.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Can't get that from any other podcast. I'm just saying.
There you
That's
go.
right.
Exactly. In fact, there's no other podcast like this one. So
that's right.
Like and subscribe.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, talking about that sort of thing, we're going to be getting the merch. You got to remember the word is merch, not swag. We're going to have merch available for all you listeners out there. We're going to find a way to get this available, and we may even have a discount code in the future as well. So stay tuned for that. But on behalf of Robert Emerson and myself, Jerry, Dr. Gerald George Moneykirot, thanks once again, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and especially to share. Make sure that you share the love with everybody. And until next time, thank you so much. Cheers.